What does it take to be a successful coach? Fitness, strength conditioning, sports performance. I'm going to be very careful this last one. Diet coaching. Make sure you're in your lane on that one. But what does it take? I'm Jason Miller, PhD, and I say that in this video, not because I'm trying to be cool. I did suffer for that, those letters, though, man. I earned every bit of those things. Those that have them understand that. But what I am emphasizing the PhD is I'm also an educator. I'm also involved with higher education. And I educate personal trainers, strength conditioning coaches, sports coaches, and to some degree, diet coaches, not directly. What does it take then? As an educator, what do I see it takes? I've also have over 20 years of experience in this field as a strength coach at different levels, all the way up to the Olympic level, if you want to think about it, with high performance. Worked with Olympic athletes. I've worked with junior high kids. I've worked with pre-junior high kids, actually, come to think of that, right? Worked with elementary school kids. Worked in a Globo gym as a personal trainer to everybody and anybody. I'm a diet coach and training coach right now with RP. So remote coaching. I've done many, many things in this field, and I've enjoyed a lot of those experiences, except for getting up super early. That's why I decided I want to be a professor. I got tired of getting up at 4:30 in the morning. And so, what does it take, though, to be a good professional? And what I want to cover in this video are a progression, a progression of what it looks like. Like, what should you do? Okay, I get some emails occasionally. What do I want to do this. How do I be good at this? Well, number one, formal education. That's what I do during the day. Is sometimes nighttime. Is the formal education. So a 4-year school or a 2-year school. What I would emphasize there is make sure that if you can, and you're picking a program, find a program, if you already know what you want to do, that there's at least one faculty member that has some experience or current interest in what you're doing. So if you want to be a strength coach, don't go to a faculty that is all clinical exercise physiologists. And conversely, if you want to go to, into, a clinical setting, you don't want to go to a program that's all about strength conditioning or a physical education program. If you want to be a coach, a PE program may be a good fit. Exercise science may be a good fit too, but if you want to teach in the public schools, depending on where you are in the country, you might have to get a teaching certificate. And so, a lot of that's going to depend. Your selection of a formal education is going to depend on these things. If you're already in a program, you're like, crap, I want to do this now, and my program's this. Well, then that means that you're going to have to take some of the onus on yourself to fill in the blanks. So if you want to be a strength coach in your clinical program, you take all these other classes that you can, get as close to strength conditioning as you can, and then use your internship hours. If you don't have internship hours, make them for yourself, use them wisely, and get out in the field. Coaching, much of coaching is who you know, and then if you're a good coach or not, some people luck out and they just get good athletes, and that doesn't happen very often, but it does happen, so be careful with that. I'll talk about that in a minute. But what a good coach is your education and your experience and being being a good observer of not only your athletes, but your programming over time and what you're doing better or worse. And so formal education, it's not the be all and end all of this field. Just because you graduate in this field doesn't mean you're ready to be in it as a professional. Where I am currently, there's probably 500 plus graduates in some sort of exercise related field every year in the universities in this area. And I'm not in a big state. And so it's even more, like if you look at California or something else, that's going to be even higher. And so what separates you from these other people? And there are many people in this field who don't even work in this field when they're done. It's because they never positioned themselves, or they burned out of it, they didn't like it, that's fine. But they never positioned themselves to be successful. So you have to use your internship hours properly. Just some highlights in education. Take an anatomy class and a physiology class. Even if it's not in your schedule, take it, find it. Take an elective. Now you should have an anatomy class at least, an applied anatomy class, which is important. But if you can take a biology anatomy class, that's even better. I would encourage some sort of chemistry class, even an intro to chem. Have some appreciation that'll at least help you to get into the biochem a little bit and understand some of the nutrition information. It's very important. Certainly take a basic nutrition class. These are just some, biomechanics. These are all classes that should be part of a curriculum anyway. I think they're important. And so, I'm not saying I'm definitely not saying avoid a formal education. I'm saying get one, but these are things that you should really be vested in. When you take the classes, vest yourself. I'm extraordinarily disappointed in the anatomy knowledge of many in our field. And I don't think it's necessarily that they weren't taught. It's just that when we take the classes, I'm speaking for some experience here. I played college football, and that's really what I was focused on. I had to go back and relearn everything because I didn't do a good job of vesting myself in my education the first time. I didn't have any life experience. And so that's a problem with education as well. Many times we don't know what we want to do. And so when we go there, we're screwing around. We're getting the college experience, but we're not really learning anything. And so vest yourself in the education that you're into and learn. You should know how many hamstring muscles there are. You should understand the words in insertion. You should understand, the difference between a soleus and a gastroc, and these are, the kinetic chain. You should understand all these things if you're going to be in this field. And I see many that aren't. Just be, and I'll talk about experience in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, education, seminars. So whether you go to a 2-year, especially if you go to a 2-year, take a lot of seminars. If you go to a 4-year, take some seminars. I would take more if I was in a 2-year, just because you didn't maybe get as much of the applied. Maybe. I've seen 4-year programs that weren't that great either. So I'm not belittling a community college program at all. We have one locally here that's fantastic. And it's way cheap, right? That's not a bad outlet to go to. You can even go to a 4-year then afterwards if you wanted to. But the point is, seminars are great. Even if it's seminars you don't necessarily agree with the presenter after you're done, that's okay. Take from what you have. This field is about it depends. Remember those 2 words. It depends. And so you have to have a diversified tool bag in order to pull out different things. You have to, have exercise swapping abilities. What exercise is going to work that this one doesn't? What mobility challenges are there that I can use these? Here's some mobility drills I didn't think of before. I hated that speaker, but man, I learned a new mobility drill for the hips I never even considered. Fantastic. If you don't know anything about powerlifting, you don't learn anything about powerlifting, you take a seminar on how to teach powerlifting, at least basic powerlifting movements. I'm not a powerlifting coach myself, but I use some of the movements, and I better understand how to get people into those movement patterns properly. So these are the things I'm talking about with seminars. They don't have, they don't have to be extraordinarily long, but they can be webinars, things where you learn skills, add skills to your thing. Any profession, in our profession, I don't know, I think it's just because we don't have a accrediting body that's overarching like you do in other fields like physical therapy, is we tend to, I think, just keep relying on our own experiences instead of growing in our knowledge. I'm not saying those experiences aren't valuable, but we need to hear others' experiences, because there may be somebody that walks in the door one day that person has worked with and we never have. And now we have those tools in order to help that person, whether that's just general fitness or in high performance or strength conditioning or sports performance setting. I found that even more so in the last few years when it comes to sports psychology. That's been my weakness. The conscious coaching book is a great book, to highlight some of the different personalities. And this is an area that I've tried to really work hard on, and I need to work harder. So identify where your weaknesses are and plug them up with seminars. It doesn't mean they're the be-all and end-all. Now, out of seminars, the next thing is certifications. Which one should you get? I would highly recommend one from one of the 2 major bodies, American College of Sports Medicine, National Strength Conditioning Association. American College of Sports Medicine is more general population and special population, and the NSCA used to be more general population of sports performance, even more sports performance. And in my opinion, they kind of sold out back in the late 90s when I was first getting into strength conditioning. It was all about strength conditioning. And now you try having special populations. That's unfortunate in my opinion. They've lost a lot of strength coaches as a result, and they lost kind of their special place. They still put out some good literature. They have some good books. It's a worthy organization to be a part of. And the reason I mention AACSM, American College of Sports Medicine, NSCA, the National Strength Conditioning Association, is they have certifications that require a 4-year degree. Now, there is one other organization that I'm involved with, so bias alert, I suppose, and strength conditioning, is my interest. So that in that respect, I am biased, and that is a CSCCA, Collegiate Strength Conditioning Association. This is for coaches that want to go into strength conditioning for the college setting, which is a tough place to break in. When I started in 100 years ago, it was pretty easy to get a GA. Now you can't find those. Now you're working for free as an intern, slogging it out for 9 months just to even get your foot in the door at a D2. And so it's changed a lot. Be real, going with your eyes open if you're going to be a collegiate strength conditioning coach. But the CSCCA is a good organization. It's where all the coaches are, and they have a mentoring program, which I really like. Some hate it, but I think as coaches, we need to step back and say, even if I don't agree with the coach that's mentoring me, you can learn a lot the same way of a seminar. That leads into what I'm going to talk about next, after I mentioned something about certs. A weekend doesn't make you an expert. So I think the CrossFit level 1, USAW level 1, all these level 1s and these entry level personal trainer certs, I mentioned some that are part of NSCA, CCM, ACE, NASM, they're great, but that's just a beginning. That's just say like, can you walk, walk a straight line? Yes, great. That's the basics. It doesn't make you an expert. And I see some of these certs sometimes carried around like they're, well, I have this cert. Can I be honest? Big deal. At least from now, from this point on, it's a big deal that you've made the effort and you understand some basic knowledge, like a seminar. But the actual cert itself, don't just rest on that. That's just the beginning. Okay, even a PhD, like I have a PhD. That's a really long cert. That's a 4-year cert. But if I'd stop if I would have stopped back when I got my PhD, I wouldn't be half the coach I am now. It's a continuous process. In fact, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know crap. And that's okay. You got to be a little humble in that. And so I think the certs are great. I think I've advanced in the cert process in USAW myself. Some of that's more about my athletes than me. And I'm going to continue to if I can. And I think it's wonderful. But it doesn't mean I'm a good coach. I've met coaches that have no certs that are fantastic, like some of the best coaches, and other coaches that have tons of certs, and I'm like, well, they're really not doing anything special. They just got good athletes. Okay, so be mindful of that. And of course, there's people in between. There's the great coaches that have certs. When you're evaluating a certification, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying you should, it's not worth having a level 1 of something. But I am saying is that's just what it is. It's a level 1 or level 2. It means something, but there's more. There's a lot more. Certs. Now, mentoring, I mentioned that already. I would encourage anybody in this field to find a mentor. It doesn't have to be somebody you spend forever with. You don't have to be like best buddies with, but it's oftentimes nice to have somebody in the field that's been in the field for a while, and you may not even agree with all their training philosophies, but let them mentor you a little bit. If you're in a gym and there's an older personal trainer that's been doing it for a decade, talk to them, sit down, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy formal, but just talk to them, pick their brain, and hey, I got this client, what do you think? And it's okay to admit that you don't know everything. I just mentioned that. And so find a mentor in the field that can help fill in some of those blanks. They could be wrong, but at least, again, you're adding to your toolbox. And over time, you will start to establish your own presence, and people will look to you to be mentored. But your own mentoring should never stop. There's certain coaches, and I don't have a formal mentor anymore like I did when I first started. I had a couple, and I wouldn't even call them a mentor. I would just say they're colleagues and coaches I would just correspond with. But even locally now, there's some coaches that I'll ask questions, and they may not even realize that I'm asking for their advice, but I want to know what they're doing. I'm watching an athlete that I watched day 1, and now it's 3 years later, and they look great. I mean, what have you been doing? I'm really interested in this. So find out. There's more. There's a lot of ways to do this whole kinesiology, personal training, strength conditioning, the whole coaching realm. You got to invest yourself in the process. So just a little background from education standpoint, from somebody who's been in the field a long time. I didn't talk about dietetics, but if you're really interested in being a diet coach and being fantastic, I would highly recommend you work towards a registered dietitian credential. That opens so many doors. And right now, it's one of the fields that's not as flooded like physical therapy is. Chiropractic's starting to get there. The rehab sciences of any type, athletic training, these are all kind of flooded fields. Sports psychology, I think it's starting to get a little bit better. Physical educators are still needed, but depending on where you are. But nutrition is an amazing field that I would highly recommend. And as long as you have some desire to do a lot more chem work, it's a good idea. It's worth pursuing, especially if you enjoy food, cooking, things like that. There's a lot of diet coaches around, and it's the same thing like personal training. Just because you like food doesn't mean you're a good diet coach, right? I mentioned that as part of being an RD, but that's part of being an RD. An RD is a specialized person that can work with anybody that's related to dietetics. If you're a diet coach, you should have a very limited scope. And I'm not saying this, I have a PhD, I have other credentials, I've been doing this a long time, but I'm limited in my scope, as I should be when it comes to dietetics. And so just make sure that you're careful with that, not getting overextended. Some gyms tend to do that a little more than others. So again, no judgment in this video. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I am trying to encourage the quality of our field to improve because until, and I don't think it'll ever happen, but until we get a governing board certified person or board certified position, so a credential of something in fitness that is, uniform across the field, we're always going to struggle with this. We're kind of the Wild West of fields. That's why we have, varying degrees of professional, um, successful professionals or not. It's also why you can just look really good on social media and make just as much money who's brilliant. And that's unfortunate, but at least be the person who's brilliant and actually helping people. Okay. And making that money still, but you're helping people first and foremost. And you can feel comfortable and confident then that you're setting people up for lifelong success and not just pre-post pictures, which are great. I love pre-post pictures, but I hope that what we're doing is more than that. We're building people, especially in just the fitness world, we're pushing people off into a lifelong healthy pursuits. And when it comes to athletics, we're part of that journey, or maybe we're the last stop if we're, in a collegiate setting or even a high performance setting. But I hope that we're progressing those athletes in a way that it doesn't use them up, right? It doesn't cause them to be so beat up and damaged that, yeah, we got what we want out of them, but now they're just a shell of what they were. And if they're trying to go to the next level or, see production later in their career, they can't do that because we just beat the heck out of them early on. All right. That's enough for me.